Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Rise of Justice Movement podcast. My name is Zachary Mallory, and I am the host and the founder of the Rise of Justice Movement and the Rise of Justice Movement, the podcast. Today, I'll give a viewer discretion is advised due to the nature of the topics that we will be discussing. All right, so this is another addition to the candidate series, and people that are listening, you're gonna get tired of me saying that, but it's because we have over 100 candidates that we're interviewing for this series. This is highly anticipated, and every candidate that we're interviewing has been recommended by somebody, oftentimes in their district, of these candidates that are running. They come as recommended, but this one specifically, one was recommended, but also caught my attention because you're such a badass human being that these videos tend to go a little viral, right? And I learned about you, and then I came across your social media, and I was like, I gotta sit down and get to know this human being. And there's a story because you can hear it in your voice. You've got a story. And I resonate with your story very deeply. So without further ado, Shonique Williams, oh my God, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me, Zach.
I am so excited, first of all. And I don't get all gushy and I don't get all like emotional whenever I talk to people, but I do with you because you have such energy that I want you to come to Kansas and run for office here because we need your damn voice. But with that being said, let's kind of dive in a little bit. And I know that this is a loaded question, and I know that there might be some tears shed and you know what? I'm gonna do it with you because we're in this for the next hour. There's gonna be a lot of emotions. There's gonna be a lot of feelings. The point of this podcast is to bring the human perspective behind the candidate. Is what my philosophy was with creating the candidate series because there's a reason for why you're running. People run for office just like any other job for a paycheck and to collect, these big donors. But what politics really is about representing the people and about being purely grassroots. We need to bring the integrity back to politics. There's a lot of people that say, "Oh, I don't do politics," and the reason for that is because it's gotten so damn ugly with the big money influence, which we'll talk about here in a little bit. But my first question to you is, what's your story, and how has it influenced you to run for Congress? Because you're running in California, so there's a lot of different political ideologies in the state of California. So let's dive in. What's your story and how has it influenced you to run for office?
So let's see how we can get through this without getting too emotional because I don't know why. I'm not just saying this. This is literally the first podcast that I've been on where during the intro, I am experiencing a lot of emotions. I got teary-eyed at some point in there, and um, I'm pretty sure it's due to the platform and me knowing the importance of the space to give voices to survivors. And I have survived a lot. I have survived a lot. Okay. When we It is a loaded question to ask me why, because everything that embodies me, everything that I grew up and I experienced is what has led me to run for Congress. I love that you said we were bringing the integrity back to politics, but as a Black woman, born and raised in America, right? Born and raised in Southern California, integrity was never in politics. It was never there. This is bringing integrity to politics for the first time. This is giving a voice to the people for the first time. And that is what my campaign is about. Because when I think of someone such as myself, I was born in Riverside, California, and that is in Riverside County as well. Being born to a mother that had her first child at 16, I'm my mother's second child. She had her first child at 16. Um, one of my main goals and focuses in life was to not fall under that statistic, to not be a teen mother. I was able to accomplish that, right? And that was great. That was beautiful for me. But the sad part about it is, for a while there, I don't know if I had many other dreams and goals and aspirations, if that makes sense. Like I was so focused on not being a statistic, so focused on not being a teen mom, so focused on not being like my mother. And growing up, I didn't really completely understand always the sacrifices that my mom made. I will, be honest about that because I did grow up in a home of child abuse. I experienced every form of child abuse, physically, mentally, emotionally, sexually. And that was at the hands of my stepfather. And there was participation from my mother to silence me as a victim for no other words and thought processes than to say to protect her relationship, her marriage, right? And it's sad because a lot of people around the world resonate with that, being silenced about the abuse you're experiencing for whatever reason, the abuser and people around that abuser of yours wants to silence you. So when people are questioning, why do I yell? Why do I scream? Why do I cuss? Because I didn't always have a voice. Okay. I've always been vocal. I've been talking since the age of 1, but my voice was silenced about the harm that I was experiencing because my mother wanted to protect her husband, my stepfather, my abuser. So imagine growing up, and the first time I experienced abuse, I was 1 years old. Remember, I told you I began talking at 1. The first time I experienced sexual abuse, I was 1 years old. And it was not at the hands of my stepfather. That didn't start until I was 3. It was at the hands of an uncle of mine's. I'm sorry, let me correct that. He's not my uncle. He's actually my cousin, but he's so much older. He's not really an uncle. He's a cousin. But it was at the hands of this man, and he's currently in state prison on today due to the sexual abuse that he inflicted upon many of the women in my family when we were children. Okay, and as sad as it is, he also abused my mother when she was a child. So this was an ongoing cycle of abuse that no one in my family was bold enough and unapologetic enough to expose and to tell the truth. And you might question why. Well, I'm going to say for myself, I don't want to necessarily say for the Black community, but for myself, being a young Black woman, we were taught to not put people in our business, to not tell people what was going on in our household, especially not the system. And the system included law enforcement and it included child protective services. So although we were being harmed growing up, um, again, not wanting to blanket the whole Black community, but particularly in my Black household and the Black households around me, we were taught to not speak up and to not trust the system. And there was several things happening that were true at the same time. As a Black individual, we could not trust law enforcement growing up. We could not trust child protective services growing up. So there was no safe place to go and to talk about our abuse. There was no safe space to expose the harm that we were experiencing. So I had no persons, no people, no system that I could go talk to about the abuse that I was experiencing at home at the hands of my stepfather and my mother. But I needed help and I needed a way out. So instead of that, there became a point in my story, a point in my journey where I inflicted self harm in an attempt to not unalive myself, but in an attempt to end this abuse, right? And I know that's a whole lot of loaded information, but this is the truth and the reality for many people. When you are silenced and you do not have a voice and you do not have an outlet, there is extremities that people will go through. For some people, that is suicide. For some people, it's drugs. For some people, it's alcoholism. For some people, it's they become an abuser or they become a victim of abuse. And that is the truth and the reality that we do not talk about in America. And so when I'm fighting for mental health services, it's because I know the struggle of what mental health, the lack of mental health services looks like. I know the struggle of what substance abuse and addiction looks like because although I did not participate in substance abuse, that stepfather of mine I'm talking about, he was an alcoholic and he was addicted to drugs. And when he would get high and when he would get drunk, he would inflict harm on my mother. He would physically abuse her and he would physically abuse her children. as well as himself, right? He was causing harm. And so when I look at a system in place in America, whether we're talking law enforcement, whether we're talking child protective services, whether we're talking about substance abuse treatment programs, these systems cannot be funded enough, to be quite honest. They have to be funded, with they have to be funded in a way that people, victims such as myself, survivors such as myself, we are able to see real tangible results, right? And I say this because there's so much to the story and it's so hard to answer it. But my advocacy for America, my advocacy for California, for District 41 is literally centered around the experiences and the things that I have gone through. I know that we can't turn a blind eye to the harm, the real terrorism that is happening at the hands of ICE. Because as a Black woman, I understand the over policing, the overzealous prosecution, and the mass incarceration of Black people. And this all comes together. There's many other podcasts out here available to speak to my wrongful conviction as a domestic violence survivor when I called the police for help. So I won't spend much time on this platform talking about it because there's so many other segments of my story that I would love for us to, get into. But I just want people to understand some of the beginning of this fight for me. It started as young as 1 years old, and the harms and the abuses that I experienced, and those harms and those abuses on today are being experienced by other men and women, boys and girls all around the world, and there's not real tangible resources and help for them, whether as the victim or even as the abuser, because I also believe that abusers need help too. A lot of times they were victims at one point and then they became abusers. And so that was a lot of information that I, dropped here. So that's of course why we had that viewer discretion information. But I want people to understand I fight the way that I do because I was silenced for so long. And I know that we have to give victims a voice, and we have to give people with these lived experiences a voice, and we have to bring integrity to politics for the first time.
Absolutely, because the systems are working exactly how they were designed, which was to silence people like you and me and protect you know, the top 1%, right? And it's to protect the rich, it's to protect the powerful. And I come from a background of a disabled mother, but I also come from a background of a line of survivors. My grandmother, my mom, and then me. My grandfather's side was strong military, and my grandfather was like very strong in like union organizing, and he was an Air Force veteran. But whew, okay, as you were saying about not getting emotional or trying to talk about this without being emotional, because I feel like you and I actually need to do something like another episode, but not about your campaign, but it needs to be about your story. So that, you know, if
Let
anybody
me
out there
know.
is listening, we're going to do this because
Yeah.
I'm intrigued.
Yeah.
Um, but let's kind of jump in and talk a little bit about, criminal justice. So again, that's such a loaded question. But I think it's also important hearing about, advocating, like, did you go through like court processes and can you talk a little bit, as much as you would like to, about navigating the criminal justice system as somebody who has experienced the trauma and is a survivor? What was it like for you navigating that criminal justice system, and what are some of those systemic inequities and systemic racism absolutely exists within the criminal justice system? And this is a part of your platform too, is about criminal justice reform and, like kind of talking about that a little bit. So, walk us through a little bit about your journey navigating that criminal justice system. You don't have to share like obvious, like deep details, just like the Cliff Notes version of what it was like for you, those emotions of, talking to your judge and talking to law enforcement and, having to explain what you experienced over and over and over again. I know what it was like for me, and it's deeply traumatic. It's re-traumatization. It's the victim blaming. It's the constant shame, and you feel like whatever you say, you're not going to be believed. It's that real fear So, walk us through a little bit about navigating the criminal justice system, specifically for you from your perspective.
Well, the interesting part about me as a candidate is I experienced a wrongful conviction several years ago that resulted in my wrongful incarceration as a victim of domestic violence. But I'm also going through the carceral system right now as a congressional candidate, and it's due to racial injustice. Before I get into the current cases that I'm fighting, let me say for my past experiences, my abuser was a childhood friend. I grew up with a childhood friend that experienced many harms and many abuses himself. And instead of getting the necessary resources and tools to, heal and navigate through his traumas, he decided that he was going to victimize me. Instead of getting the help that he needed, he burnt that anger, frustration, and trauma onto me, and he was violent with me. He was an abuser of substances, and when he would get under the influence, that would result in my physical harm at the hands of him. The, I was with him for about 5.5 years, and I had everyone calling the police for help from me, from neighbors to professors in my colleges to just anyone and everyone, to be quite honest, strangers, because he was inflicting abuse on me, beating me in public, at home. It was to the point, it was out of control, and it was no restrictions for where the abuse would occur and how bad it was. Beat unconscious, black eyes, busted lips, like you name it. Like this was a regular thing for me for about 5.5 years. And I got with him when I was about 18, 19 years old. And this went on all the way up until I was about 23. So the first time I actually called the police on him, he had beat me unconscious, and this was in a public space, a public setting. I called the police for the first time, and it was there's no words for it because everything that I experienced was due to being a Black woman. And, I know a lot of people in society, whether they want to openly admit it or not, will say, oh, people always are saying it's due to race and it's due to color and, especially Black people. And that's not true, but it is. Because if the police arrive on a scene and there is a woman that has two black eyes, knots all over her face, her lip busted so bad, literally the white meat is out, hair ripped out of her head, window busted out of her car because she tried to get in the car to shield herself from the abuse. At no point in time, if I were a white woman in America, would police say that they could not determine the abuser. I never once put my hands on my abuser. I had never once fought him in the 5.5 years. I never once fought him. I never once fought back. I always, unfortunately, looked at it as if I hit him back, it's going to get worse. The abuse is going to be worse because, of course, he was under the influence, as I said. So I always looked at it as it was better to just try to shield myself and protect myself as much as possible from the hits instead of hitting back. I didn't want to call the police on him because with him he was a black man too. With him being a black man, I was concerned that he was going to get killed by the police if I called the police on him. However, the very first time after 5.5 years, I decided to call the police for the police to arrive on the scene. And I never once hit this man. I need you guys to understand that. Never once touched him. And for the police to say they cannot determine the abuser when my face is beaten so bad that you could not recognize my identity at all. My face did not look like my face. I literally looked like a mutant creature. Okay. And for the police to handcuff me, place me in the back of the vehicle, take me to jail, and say that it was going to be up to the district attorney after reviewing the facts and the information to determine who they were going to be charging. And I say that because they arrested me and the abuser. They had arrested both of us. I had an active restraining order against him. I had already left him at this point, right? Although it is very unhealthy to ask the victim, why didn't they leave? I need people to understand I had left him. I had actually been out of a relationship with him for 6 months at that point. That's what he was upset about, is because I had left him finally. That placed me at the vulnerability of the carceral system for the first time. For the first real time, I was experiencing the carceral system, and I was experiencing what many people will tell you, that fear of not having a money for your own attorney, having to use a public defender who, I believe there's absolutely great public defenders in the world, but a lot of them are overburdened and loaded with cases, and they really want to fight for justice for people. But when you lack resources to provide the proper investigation that your clients need, when you have dozens and dozens more of cases than what you can handle per day, per week, per month, unfortunately, there's times where you see someone as myself, even though I am a victim, and you believe me, you trust that as a, public defender of mine, you're also looking at it as, okay, but Miss Williams, this would be your first charge. Just go ahead and take a plea deal, because I'm over here also fighting for these people that they're going up against the death penalty and they're facing 25 years to life. So you're not trying to be insensitive to someone like me, but you're like, well, you're facing 7 years, Miss Williams. I got somebody over here that's facing the death penalty. You don't, again, you're not looking to be insensitive, but you're trying to prioritize this very heavy caseload of yours. And it had to get to a point in my head where I had to do my best to understand that. And I still don't fully understand it and fully agree, but I understand how a system that is bogged down and is not in the best interest of the people, how this makes public defenders feel, right? And so at some point in time, I actually represented myself. I don't talk about that much on my campaign. People don't know that I represented myself in court. I went what was known as pro per or pro se. And so I handled my own jury trial. It was a jury trial, and I introduced my own evidence. Many people do not understand that introducing evidence in a criminal proceeding during a jury trial is not black and white. Okay. You are limited to the information you can introduce to the jury. You are railroaded, even if it's not intentional by the judge, you are railroaded about the information you're able to introduce. So I was not able to introduce to the jury that, listened to my case, all of the harm and the abuse that I experienced for 5.5 years. They were limited to the information that they could hear. And what were they limited to? The cases that were actually prosecuted. So, see, my abuser, he had been arrested and charged with domestic violence. I don't even know how many times. It was that many cases with me as the victim. But he took a plea bargain at one point in time, about a year and a half, 2 years before my case. And with that plea bargain, there was a bundling of his cases. And it was, hey, we'll dismiss this charge, 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 if you plead guilty to that one charge. So while that doesn't make sense to those of us listening, here, I'm sure what that means is when I was able to present my case to the jury, I wasn't able to speak about all of the calls, all of the arrests that he, was the abuser and I was the victim. I wasn't able to do that. I was able to speak about, the one or the two specific charges that he was actually convicted for. And that is allegedly to preserve his rights and allegedly to preserve minds, but how is it preserving rights when the jury doesn't get to hear the whole story? So I say that to say many people over the years, they don't understand over the years of like hearing me speak, they don't understand how can an innocent person be prosecuted in America? And a lot of it comes down to suppression of evidence in the carceral system. And that's not justice. That's not justice at all, because you're removing the voice of the victim in a case such as mine. So I was facing 7 years in state prison due to the charge. I ended up getting 2 years with half. And what that means is instead of facing a full 2 years, I only had to do 1 year, which is 50% of that charge. And while I was angry, hurt, confused, all of these things, I decided to allow my story to be a driving force for victims of domestic violence, for it to be a driving force for women that experience other harm, for people that experience other harm. And that led me into civil rights leadership. So I was about 23 at the time, and that led me to civil rights leadership because I realized at that time, whether again America was ready to be honest about it or not, America has a problem with racism, and America has a problem with sexism, and America has a problem with bigotry and classism, and all of these things led to my wrongful conviction. Fast forward onto today to my campaign. I am currently facing two criminal charges. Oh, I'm sorry, two criminal cases, a total of four charges. And the first one will date back to January of 2026. And I won't get into too many details because it is an ongoing criminal investigation. However, I was attending a city council meeting. And during the city council meeting, as people were attempting to enter into the city council meeting, there was an officer, several male officers, but one particular officer, he began to shove and push women that were entering this meeting. And these women were already inside the meeting. They stepped out to go to the restroom. And as they were trying to enter back in, he began pushing and shoving them, towards this door, towards this wall. So when I see that, I immediately start going off. Like, keep your fucking hands off of them. What are you pushing on them for? Like, what are you doing? And again, this is a uniformed officer abusing his power, just pushing on bystanders walking into a meeting, a city council meeting, in case you guys did not know, is a public open forum space. Anyone and everyone is welcome there. You do not have to be a community member from that particular city. And law enforcement, in case you guys did not know, because it's hard to tell in America, their job is to protect and serve. Okay. That does not give them a legal right to inflict harm and abuse on someone just because they feel like it. And that's what this officer was doing. So I, confront him, and I'm like, keep your fucking hands off of her. Like, push me. And that's my mentality, outside of even running for Congress. That's my mentality. You want to harm somebody, harm me. Go ahead and harm me, because, of course, she didn't push back. Although she didn't commit a crime and this officer had no right to batter her, because that is battery, she didn't push him back. And she didn't push him back, I'm pretty positive, because he was a uniformed officer. And that is the problem in America. Just because you have a badge on does not give you the right to overexert power and authority and abuse people. So when I confronted that, instead of that being met with an understanding of, like, you know what, this officer was wrong, by his colleagues, instead they made a order of disbursement for all of us to leave. And they're like, okay, all of you guys get out of this meeting space. Like, all of you guys get out. Mind you, we didn't put our hands on anyone. None of us community members. Law enforcement put their hands on the community. So in the process of that, there was an officer that reached through the crowd of people. Again, it's an ongoing criminal investigation, but there's some footage available there. He reaches through the crowd of people and he pulls me by my arm, yanks me by my arm. He pulls my left arm out of socket. Completely pulls it out of socket. You can hear it. Everybody live present, you hear it. He pulls my arm out of socket, goes, pulls my arm, this arm that he already had pulled out of socket, pulls it up behind my back, had my, elbow going up towards, the back of my head, slams my head. Okay, slams my head up against, like, I don't know if I want to describe it as like a brick wall or a concrete wall, but it was a brick or a concrete wall. Slams my head first on the right side. I get a knot to the top right side of my head. My lip busts at the top and the bottom on the right side. Pulls my head back by the back of my hair, back of my neck. Slams my head again up against the left side. Knocks my face up all on the left side. This is law enforcement. I didn't put my hands on this man. But due to the abuse of power in the unchecked systems, this is abuse that I was experiencing as a community member. This wasn't even me as a congressperson. This was me as a community member, recognizing abuse was happening by law enforcement and confronting it and addressing it, saying, you don't have a right to put your hands on us. We didn't commit a crime. And we didn't commit a crime. And we also didn't put our hands on anybody. But guess what? Society doesn't understand. America doesn't understand. Even if you do commit a crime, law enforcement has no right to abuse you. That's not how that works. They can arrest you legally, but they don't have a right to abuse you. And what that officer did to that woman was abuse. He battered her unprovoked. Okay. I was battered unprovoked for standing up for someone else. And many people do not know in America what that is known as, as a defense, as a legal defense. That is defense of others. I was simply attempting to defend this woman, and then I ended up becoming a victim of these same officers. That was in January of 2026. February of 2026. I'm helping participate in what's known as a school walkout. Particularly in United States, you have what's known as the First Amendment right to peacefully assemble, right? Your right to protest. America at this point in time is allowing people to forget that that is a right of ours, but we have a right to peacefully protest, you all. And that includes students, that includes minors. So there were middle school and high school students in the state of California, in this, county of Los Angeles, that were participating in a school walkout. During that process, there was some officers that racially profiled a car that had two Hispanic children in it and two Black children in it. And these all four were boys. and they were high school students. This officer pulls them over. They are participating in this peaceful protest. To give you all a visual, there was hundreds, probably at least like 400 students walking from their high school over to the city hall to protest to abolish ICE. And there were several vehicles. There were over a dozen vehicles that we were driving alongside. The law enforcement stopped one particular vehicle, as I said, two Hispanic boys, two Black boys. They did not commit a crime. Law enforcement stopped them. Okay. So when they did that, I pull alongside the vehicle and I'm like, record. I went to go record. I take that back. I didn't get to record. I went to go record, but I didn't want the officers to think I was reaching for a weapon. Point was, I'm like, why did you pull them over? Like they didn't commit a crime. We're peacefully protesting, X, Y, and Z. The officers try to shoo me away. I'm like, well, no, this is my name's Shonique Williams. I'm running for Congress. This is my district I'm in, you guys, when this is happening. I'm like, this is the district I'm running in. I just want to make sure these children are okay. Like, it's like, what do you need? Long story short, there was a few moments of escalation at the hands of the officers, and they attempt to taser the driver. The driver had stepped out of the vehicle. This is a Hispanic child. Again, I'm talking about children, you guys. These are high school students. They attempt to taser him. Mind you, the sad part about it is when the officer first reached for his weapon, it was so fast and there was so much shock and adrenaline happening. I did not know if he was reaching for a gun or a taser. Understand that. I did not know. All I saw was him reach for the weapon and pull out a weapon. And I didn't know if this again was a gun or a taser. I immediately just jumped in front of the kid. My brain didn't have time to process. It was just like, save this child. Okay. I jump in front of this kid and I like got my arms wide open and I'm just like, no, not today. You're not going to hurt a kid. Mind you, in this moment, I didn't know it was a taser. Thankfully, it turned out to be a taser. And I was only able to like come to and realize it was a taser because it lit up. And the officer just kept telling me to move because, mind you, even though let me back up, this child, he didn't have a weapon, you guys. He had not committed a crime. This officer was going to taser an innocent child that had no weapon and had not committed a crime. So when I'm standing in front of this child, initially not even knowing if me or this kid was going to be shot, I'm standing there. It was just like there was no thought process. It was just defensively like I can't let this crime happen in front of me. I can't let this harm happen in front of me. Well, I was arrested as a result of that. I was arrested, and you would think like, well, what the heck did you do? Oh, it was called obstruction of a peace officer. Obstruction of a peace officer for preventing you from tasing a child that had not committed a crime. And I don't know if you all know here in America, but people die from being tased. Adults die from being tased, okay? So to know that an officer was going to tase an unarmed, innocent child and could have potentially killed him. And then for me to be facing a charge because I stood in front of that child and prevented him from being tased. I'm currently fighting that case right now on today. I have court in a few weeks for that case. That is America. That January case, and guys, in case you guys are wondering what the charges were, I had three charges of resisting arrest. And the reason it's three charges is because it's three different officers. Remember, I'm explaining to you how I was abused and how I was harmed for stopping the officers from putting their hands on innocent people walking into the meeting. I was charged. And you think about these charges, if any of you know anything about criminal justice, civil rights, it is unfortunately common when the police fuck up and they harm people for you to be charged with resisting arrest or obstruction of a peace officer. And the reason why is because if they can get a conviction for one of those charges, it is less likely that you're able to sue for your civil rights being violated. That is America. That is the carceral system. And that is what's happening to me as a candidate. So just imagine others.
Mhm. Exactly. And if they can do it to one, they can do it to all. And that's the reality of that. And I realize that, you realize that. Now, does anybody out there also understand that? Or are you listening to the story like, oh my God, I can't believe this actually happens? This is just one or two or three of those instances. There's millions of others, right? And this is an ongoing pattern, and it's a power, it's abuse of power directly. A lot of police departments across the country have a thing called a 287G contract, which is a contract with DHS where they kind of enforce like immigration um, procedures without being a federal agent. Now, thinking about, DHS, anybody who's listening, if you're older than 2003, you are older than DHS. You have been around longer than DHS was created. And also thinking about, kind of shifting gears here a little bit, it all directly kind of connects as well. Money in politics. So I know your campaign does not take APAC, does not take corporate dollars, does not take anything like that. But 2010, there was a ruling from the Supreme Court, and it was titled Citizens United versus the FEC, or Federal Elections Commission. In your opinion and in your thoughts, what does money in politics look like, and how do we recognize the ongoing influence that money has in politics? And what do we need to do to overturn Citizens United? Again, this is a loaded question because this can go on for quite a while. Let's do the Cliff Notes version. And we'll do a follow-up episode, after your primary, and we'll kind of like dive into this a little bit further. But let's talk about some money in politics and the influence.
Money in politics, I could put it into one word. Money in politics looks like corruption. It looks like corruption. Many of you will watch horrific things happen in our country and around the world, and then you'll question, well, why aren't our elected officials doing something? Why aren't they saying something? Because they're sold out. And what I mean by that is because of the money that they have accepted from APOC or the big corporations that they have accepted money from, they cannot speak on certain issues, because if they do, they will have that money taken back from them, and or they won't receive future support financially from these institutions, from these places. And that's what they want. So when a campaign such as mine, being 100% grassroots, not accepting APOC money, big corporation dirty money, the reason I do that is because my campaign and my elected seat will remain for the people. The only way I can be a voice for the people is if I do not sell out. Okay. The only way I can be a voice for the people if I do not become enslaved to the systems and the barriers and the harms that are going up against the people. I cannot say that I'm fighting for you as a candidate or an elected official when I am taking money from the very systems, from the very corporations that are harming you by design. Because as you said in the beginning, that this is all operating as design. So if I'm taking money from these systems operating as designed to harm you, I cannot protect you. I cannot defend you. I cannot be your voice. So money in politics looks like you have a strong candidate such as myself, and I shared this with Zach. You have a strong candidate such as myself that is a Democrat, and I apply, and I spend $500 to apply for the California Democratic Party's votes. Sorry about that. Endorsement. I'm sorry, the California Democratic Party's endorsement. I apply for that. And this cost me $500 to apply, to interview, to say, hey, California Democratic Party, I'm a Democrat. I believe in democracy. I'm fighting for the people. This is my platform. This is what I'm about. Please allow me the opportunity to interview, simply interview in order to receive your endorsement. California Democratic Party says, okay, you can interview with us, but you got to pay us $500 to listen to your interview. You got to pay us to listen for what you're going to do for the people. That alone doesn't make sense. Why do I have to pay you for you to hear what my issues are, the policies that I want to push forward for the people? But that's what it costs. Okay. Then when I did that, right, because I pay that $500 at the time, my seat was an open seat. Backtracking a little bit, California went through what's known as an election, a special election for Proposition 50. And that was due to, us needing to redistrict our maps, pushing for democracy, right? So California's District 41 used to be in Riverside County. It is no longer in Riverside County. Prop 50 moved it to Southeast Los Angeles, North Orange County. So it is what's known as an open seat. And it is an open seat because the previous, how do I say this? It's sort of tangled. The previous elected official that is an incumbent here is a Republican by the name of Ken Calvert. Although technically until the end of December of 2026, he is still the current incumbent of District 41. The old District 41, he is not the incumbent of the new District 41 because it's completely moved counties. Okay. That's a lot to follow, but follow along with this being a new seat, an open seat, that means there's not an incumbent. Okay, there's not an incumbent because, again, remember, Ken Calvert is over in Riverside County. Prop 50 brought this over here to Los Angeles County and Orange County. Well, I'm running against someone by the name of Linda Sanchez. She is a Democrat who her current congressional seat that she has been in for 23 years is District 38. Linda Sanchez is deciding she doesn't want to be in District 38 anymore. Her district is still there. She's leaving District 38. She's running in the new seat that is District 41, the seat that I'm running in. So I have already paid my $500 to interview, okay, to only interview to try to win that California Democratic Party endorsement. Well, Linda Sanchez decides I'm going to run in District 41. So she leaves District 38 to run in District 41. Guess what? She gets the title of an incumbent. You're like, well, wait, Shonique, you just said Ken Calvert is the incumbent for District 41. He is. He is. But because Linda Sanchez is currently in Congress and decides that she wants to run in District 41, she's now considered the incumbent here, even though it's also still considered an open seat. So that sounds confusing, right? It's because it is. It is still technically an open seat, but now it technically has an incumbent running in it because she's currently a congressional member of District 38. So even though I paid to interview, not to automatically receive endorsement, to interview for endorsement, Linda Sanchez was provided the automatic endorsement from the California Democratic Party. And you're like, well, Shonique, what does that mean? What that means is Linda Sanchez did not have to interview. Because she is a current congressional member and decided she wants to run in District 41, she automatically received the endorsement of the California Democratic Party. So although California Democratic Party took my $500, I didn't even get to interview to be able to be considered for the endorsement. Mind you, I wasn't saying automatically give it to me. I'm not saying she couldn't have the endorsement, but why not let me interview? I already had to pay you, so why not just let me interview? And then there's also one other Democrat running in this race. He didn't get to interview either. Why? Because Linda Sanchez automatically got the endorsement. That's money in politics. And I say that because many people, instead of, looking up candidates and learning about, our policies, our issues, and things like that, they automatically go check to see, well, who did the Democratic Party endorse? You can't trust who the Democratic Party endorsed because you aren't privy to the knowledge that, wait a minute, there wasn't an endorsement process. It just automatically got given to the incumbent. So, because there was no endorsement process, guess what? The California Democratic Party, they didn't elect to endorse the candidate that was the best and the strongest for the position. No, they did not. They endorsed the person that already was in bed with them as politicians. That's money in politics. That is corruption.
And not to mention the fact, if you go to her website and you look at her current endorsements, you see Adam Schiff, Hakeem Jeffries, Catherine Clark, Jimmy Gomez, Ted Lieu. Guess what? These are establishment Democrats that literally have been in office for literally years. And not to mention the fact they vote in line with what a corporation, what ATAC, what all of these, well, again, like you said, money in politics. And then you scroll down, you see organizations, and the very top one, of course, is California Democratic Party. I
Mhm.
do not feel that that was a democratic process. That was not a democracy process because in a democracy, it gives the voice to the people. And I'm really glad that you corrected what I, or not necessarily corrected what I stated earlier, but kind of added on to it about the integrity coming back in politics. You're absolutely right. It wasn't there to begin with.
Not there.
And because it doesn't represent the people, it doesn't. It's like the criminal justice system. It doesn't help people. It pads the pockets of these private prisons and it pads the pockets of like these ICE detention centers being owned by Core Civic, which, like I told you, live here in the state of Kansas. One of the facilities, which is Leavenworth, Kansas, which has a federal prison literally inside of it, but this facility was owned by Core Civic, shut down many years ago because of the poor conditions, because of sexual abuse, because, sexual abuse allegations, etc. But they just voted to reopen it as an ICE detention center. And it's already functioning. It literally was functioning within a week of it even like being approved to reopen again. But they profit off of people being literally there.
Before I
And
move on, let's go back and say what I left out, but it's very important to know. Linda Sanchez, as of her December 2025 closings, financial closings reportings to FEC had already received over $418,000 of APOC funding.
Jesus Christ. I
On top of the need for term limits, because remember, you guys, I said she's been in office for 23 years. And
wow.
a lot of you that are listening to this, you don't even know who Linda Sanchez is, but she has been in Congress using taxpayer dollars to pay herself, you know, for 23 years. I am 34. Linda Sanchez has been in office since I was 11. I have gone on to receive my associates. First of all, graduate high school, receive my associates, bachelor's, master's, and next Thursday, my Juris Doctorate, and she is still in office. How is this person still in office after decades? Like decades. We need term limits. We need term limits. There is not a reason for any single person to be in office for the people for decades, because the whole goal of our leadership and our system isn't it to build a better and brighter future for the generations coming up? So why haven't you stepped aside and allowed people such as myself that are the generations behind you to get into office? Why
Because
not?
it's all about that greed, right? And it's all about that corporate greed and the corporate influence. And it contributes to an ongoing issue. Now, I want to shift. I know we're coming up on time here.
Yes.
I have thoroughly enjoyed sitting down and like hearing you talk. I want to do this. I could do this literally all day because there's so many things to
We can
talk
have another
about.
one.
But I'm thinking a series. But
I'm with it.
there's a
Y'all heard it.
video.
We're going to do a series potentially.
The video that is on your website is deeply powerful. Walk us through because if anybody has interviewed with me, you know that I do like a quote unquote like a pre-interview before. I always schedule the interviews to be 90 minutes. That the first 30 minutes or so is to kind of like get to know the person that I'm interviewing, see if they have any questions, etc. It's like this whole process that I have, but it also establishes credibility. Coming from a content creator slash independent journalist standpoint, I believe in integrity in interviews, right? Just like you believe in bringing integrity for the first time into politics by representing the people and not these outside influences.
Yes.
But the video on your website, in an age, and I'm gonna be honest, I thought it was AI at first. And I was like, oh God. But then I started watching it and I was like, this isn't AI. This is too good to be AI. Because if you watch any like the AI videos, you'll see that they're kind of like choppy and they look weird, these different weird movements. This is not AI. And I'm sure you've probably gotten asked the question, like, is the video on your website AI? No,
Yeah.
you can literally tell it's not. So walk us through like that aspect and why that's a critical part to kind of paint your platform. And there's also a beautiful backstory to this, and I want you to share that because you told me about this before we started recording. But
Yes.
let's talk about it.
So, those of you that are not certain what I can talk about at this time, please go to my campaign website and you're going to see what's known as my campaign launch video. And it is a fully animated video that it went through Four Lions Media. I do not recall the individual artist's name at this point in time. So sorry, but it went through Four Lions Media, and it was a creator and animator from there. And it was so great because I did not meet him prior to him making this piece for me, this beautiful visual, this beautiful piece of art. He heard my story from my campaign strategist, the campaign strategist I had at the time. And it was sort of kind of like a surprise for me. They, by they meaning my campaign strategist came to me like, hey, I got, this real cool idea for your campaign launch video, but let me like make sure things are going to, go as planned and it's going to be able to roll out, in the days that we are expecting. Before I tell you about it, I don't want you to get, like too excited too soon. So I find out about the video days before its launch. And when I'm first told about the video, it's like, oh, it's going to be you in, real life going in and out with this animated version of yourself. So I'm like, okay, because, I couldn't get the visual together myself of what they meant, but I'm like, okay, this is going to be cool. Like, this is going to be cute. And when they're saying animated version, I'm thinking like cartoon, like, yeah. So I'm like, okay, this would be cool. This would be cute. Like, I haven't seen a video like that before. And again, I'm not knowing, anything other than the lines. I did have to go over all my lines. Everything you hear there is like lines that I had to do multiple times. And I've never done no acting gigs or anything like that. So it was just interesting to shoot and not even know what I was creating this piece for. And so my team, not wanting to tell me the surprise ahead of time, they had me go through, I'm doing a whole videography, I'm doing a whole photo shoot, in real life in regards to what is going to be turned into a animated video. And so when I seen the video for the first time, I actually cried. I shared that with Zach before getting here for this recording. I cried because it was like there's a voice, right? Like it was that, remember I told you guys when we first started it, just not having a voice, right? For like all of my childhood, we didn't talk about anything in my life, to be quite honest. Even with all this time we spent together, we didn't talk about anything. I was raised on welfare. Okay. Like I said, I went through every form of child abuse. I was raised on welfare. Due to all that child abuse, I went into foster care. First time I was homeless on my own. I was homeless with my family at different points, living in hotels and stuff. But the first time I was homeless with my family, I was 15 and I was sleeping in a park. Okay. 15 years old. In case people don't know, I'm 5 foot tall. Okay. I'm small but mighty. I'm 5 foot tall. At 15, I may have weighed 100 pounds. And as I was sleeping in that park, I would sleep at think of a park and they have those little like houses at the top of the slides. I would sleep in fetal position at the top of that slide at 15 years old. And I had one outfit. I had a tank top and some basketball shorts that I would wear. And it was cold. It was cold, okay? And that was my life for a period of time, and I was hoping that that would be the end of abuse, for me, right? Didn't know how and what it was going to look like, but I was hoping it was going to be the end of abuse because I was no longer at the grasp of my stepfather. But instead, other harms happened, right? That you could only imagine being a homeless teenage girl in a park, right? So I went through a lot. Okay. So that, before you know it, like I said, I was in foster care. I aged out of foster care. And that aging out of foster care meant for me, at the time, turning 18, being thrown to the wolves. When you aged out of foster care in California, when I was turning 18, that was it. No one was receiving a check for you anymore. You're gone. You're homeless. So I went homeless again. And I was doing great things at that time. I had started college classes at 16 years old. I had a 4.0 GPA in college and in high school at 16 years old. I was doing the damn thing. But the system, I aged out. I was done. Went back to the streets, went back living on the streets, went back homeless. That's what led into that domestic violence relationship I was talking about. So as people, we don't always stop to think like, what has someone gone through, right? We're so quick to demonize people and to reduce people's harms and stories to whatever ignorances we have. People are so quick to be like, ah, oh, she yells too much. Ah, oh, she cusses too much. You don't know what the fuck I've gone through. And I have been a fighter my entire life. And because of that, and because of the harms I have experienced, I don't want anybody else to go through the shit that I went through. Because I'm telling you, majority of people would not be able to survive the things that I have survived. You would not. You would not be able to survive these things. And so when I saw this video, I knew no matter what happens on this campaign, no matter what happens on this campaign, no matter what happens with this election, this is going to give a voice to the voiceless. This is going to let people know around America, but also around the world, you can overcome any fucking thing. You can overcome anything. You can run for office just as you are. Don't let someone tell you that politicians have to look a certain kind of way. They have to dress a certain kind of way. They have to talk a certain kind of way. Your lived experience alone is enough to run for office. I don't care what degree you do not have. I do not care what education you do not have, what work experience. Your lived experience is enough. Your lived experience in surviving that validates you to run for office, because guess what? We need a voice for the voiceless. We need a voice for the people. So I have the degrees and I'm proud of them. But please know, I am really running for Congress due to my lived experiences. And I know based on my lived experiences, the help that the unhoused population needs, addicted people need, people that are facing low income, people that are in need of social service programs, people that are in need of welfare, people that are in need of groceries, people that are in need of gas, people that are in need of a fucking fair chance in America. Like, I know those lived experiences firsthand. No degree is going to teach you that. A degree can't teach you that. With all the degrees that I have, I'm telling you, the degrees don't matter. It comes down to the lived experience. So seeing this video come to life for me, it made me cry because I know that even if it touched one person, it was going to let one person know I'm fighting for you. I fought through all these systems and now I'm fighting for you.
I can't even tell you about how much I've appreciated sitting down and talking to you. I can't even begin. You can hear it in my voice. Like it's all raspy, and I've been on mute this entire time, and I've been over here like just bawling because I'm like,
Tears the whole
oh my
time.
God.
I'm gonna cry when we get off. I'm gonna be honest. I'm gonna cry when we get off, but
Because the energy that you are bringing to this is exactly how every single candidate should be bringing it. This is exactly the grassroots and the people power because the people have the power. You know, Congress has the power of the purse, has the power of control, has the power of this, power of that. Regardless of what one man states, we, the people, have the power. And whatever happens in this election, you know, wins, lose, etc., whatever, just know that your district is going to be completely different. Because now what's going to happen is those who vote for you, they're going to hold that next person even more accountable. They're going to be like, well, you know what? She ran like this. We need you to do this, or you need to get the fuck out. Because I agree with you to a certain extent. There are some current incumbents that are really, really good that need to stay in their positions. But I do believe it also in terms too, because I think, you know, if you're in Congress longer than I've been alive, we got a problem. And I'll be 30 this year. So you're just like five. I think you said you're 35. So you're 5 years older than me.
34, 35. Yeah.
But sorry, I didn't mean to age you, but um, but I turned 30 in August, and some of the congressional members have been in office for 60 plus years. I think it's an exaggeration. I think a lot of them have unfortunately passed away. But the people's house is supposed to be forever changing and moving forward. I mean, we already went back 50 years with the overturning of Roe v. Wade. You know, how much further are we going to go back? I mean, John Lewis was on the front lines, right? But he knew whenever it came time that he needed to step away and let the younger generations kind of, you know, take that power and take those roots. Our generations have been failed because of the generational trauma, the colonization, the victimization of people coming forward and sharing their experiences and sharing their stories. I think, and that's part of the reason why I created this movement, is to give that voice to people like you, to give you that platform. We have almost 400,000 followers on social media that are waiting to be activated. They want to hear these stories. They want to see what America is supposed to look like, but it's never looked like that because it's always been overshadowed. You have for-profit prison systems. You have a broken healthcare system, but I use that, but I also state that how can a system be broken when it's working exactly how it was created and how it was designed? I'm doing that for context because people understand it a lot easier if you say a broken system because they don't understand the history of that, which is where people like me come in and say, hey, look, it hasn't always been like this, or it has always been like this, but this is where we could be headed. And then we just got to get those right people in those positions, which again is a justification for those pro moments. Because it's like, and look at, anybody out there, look at who's running for office at all levels of government, all levels from your school board to your city council, because there's a lot that you can do locally
Yeah.
to make that change. Thinking about city gun violence, think about the gun violence rates, which gun violence is astronomically high in America. We know that. I live in Kansas City. I know all too well. But at the same time, I also have a lot of hope because of people like you that are running for Congress, because it doesn't matter, or I mean, it doesn't just matter what your constituents are seeing you do, because what you do is going to impact the entire country.
Yes.
Not only your district, my district here in Kansas 3, my old district in Missouri 5, and Minnesota and other places that I've lived. What you do as a federal elected official impacts this entire country. And I think it's important to recognize that. A lot of candidates forget that. They get blindsided and they only think about their constituents. Yes, that is deeply important, but are you actually holding town halls for your constituents? Or are you going to be like Roger Marshall here in the state of Kansas? You host a town hall that your team creates, and then you walk out of it because they ask a rough question. Yes, I'm
Oh, that
calling
sounds like
I'm
being
calling him
hosted.
out because he's running for reelection. But
Hmm.
it's like, and you don't even live in the state of Kansas. He actually has a residence in Florida, but he has a residence here, but he actually lives in Florida, and this is where he spends most of his time, which isn't
Sounds
very
like my
far
incumbent.
from Mar-a-Lago. Anyway, um, but thinking about that, how can people contribute to your campaign, first of all? And then secondly, how can they find you on social media? And what do you want people to understand about your campaign? So these are three questions,
Yes.
but they're rapid fire. So I'll ask them. So one, how can people contribute to your campaign?
You can contribute to my campaign via my donation link. It is available in all my social media accounts. So I am on Instagram at Shonique Williams for Congress. I am on TikTok at Shonique.Williams. I am on Facebook at Shonique Williams for Congress. Every single social media account has the donations link there. You can also visit me on my website where you get to see that video that we shared that we talked about. And my website is Shonique. Listen, even as I said it, I was like, let me not get my own website wrong. shoniqueforcongress.com. So no Williams, shoniqueforcongress.com. And when you go there, again, you'll be able to watch that campaign video and you'll be able to click on the donation link tab. Remember, I am 100% grassroots. So I will make any dollar amount work. Every single dollar amount is appreciated. For Congress, you're able to donate anywhere between $1 up to 3,500 for my primary. My primary is June 2nd. I need the money. I am looking to pay for my canvassing team. So any and every dollar amount that you can give will be greatly appreciated. And it will be paying for canvassers that will be going out with me, helping knock on doors to inform the community that I'm running. I am looking to be elected official for a total of 850,000 people here in District 41. So you heard that right. That is a huge number, 850,000 people. So I need a lot of canvassers. I need a lot of canvassers, okay? And so every dollar amount you give will be greatly appreciated. We said it earlier, but I'm gonna say it again. I do not accept APOC money. I do not accept the corporation money. No dirty money. This is 100% grassroots. 100%. Check my FEC filings, you guys. 100% grassroots. So every dollar, I promise you, is appreciated. Do not feel like your dollar amount is too small.
Absolutely, 100%. So, and we will also add your donation link into the description of this podcast episode. And you're also to add your website just to kind of like give that a little bit of visibility, a little bit of a boost. I want to say again, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I greatly appreciate you. And I look forward to continue watching you grow. I look forward, whenever you have your collaboration feature back, obviously we would love to continue collaborating. That is the Meta platform silencing voices directly. It literally is. If you go against the status quo, we know how these oligarchs, these tech bros go. But I look forward to continuing the conversation with you, and I am so deeply grateful for you being on here and just speaking so candidly in a way that's easy to digest, but also in a way that's real. And I was one last quick thought. I was telling my partner about you, and I was like, "This is the realest person that you'll probably ever hear on this podcast." Like literally, we have close to 100 episodes. Not all of them have been directly released just yet. They will be, but I have to say this is probably one of the most impactful ones. Not that all of them haven't mattered because they've been deeply inspiring, but I have to honestly say this is probably one of the top ones that this is the true, like you said, bringing the integrity to politics for the very first time. And you also inspired me about some questions that I'm going to ask some of the other ones because of how you answered them. So look, you're inspiring change, and I've done like hundreds of interviews by now, and
I had
thank
such a
you.
good time with you, Zach. I had such a
But
good time.
I greatly appreciate you. I'm going to jump into the next one, but I look forward to continuing the conversation. Thank you so much. I greatly appreciate you.
America, remember, power to the people, always.
Absolutely. Thank you. I appreciate you.
I appreciate you.